What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to a brand new episode of the GBA Podcast. This is the platform where guilty by association meets gritty, blissful ambiguity. I am your host, Nesreen, and today I am joined by another very interesting personality. They go by the name of Nikita. They are from South Africa, and I'm really excited to have them here for the second time because we did it before, y'all, but Zoom. It was all Zoom.
Zoom happened. Hi,
Exactly.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on a second time and making time for us. So, welcome, 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 first of all. And tell people a little bit about yourself. Like, who is Nikita?
So I am Nikita Ramkisoon. I am a journalist from South Africa, coming from an activist background. My parents were anti-apartheid activists, and I've just been a journalist for the past 16 years, also teaching journalism, and just passionate about human rights, music. I played the piano and was a music journalist for a little while, and very much into my nerdy stuff like Dungeons and Dragons and in the LGBTQ movement, women's rights as well. Yeah, and I have a
Okay.
podcast.
And you have a couple, yeah, with a crazy cool name. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called The Bipolar Feminist because I'm bipolar and I'm a feminist.
Yes. You're bipolar and a feminist. And I'm not laughing because of
Mhm.
that. I just love the name. I can't help it. I just love the name. And the
Thanks.
podcast is exclusive to Patreon, y'all. So if you want to find her,
Yes.
you only can find her on Patreon because
Mhm.
because yeah, that's where you find out. Yeah, sorry.
Thank
So,
you.
um, there is a lot to unpack. Let's start with you said you've been a journalist for 16 years and you started
Mhm.
being a music journalist first, right?
Yes.
And since you're very passionate about music, is this one of the few things that you mentioned? What made
Mhm.
you go from music into other stuff? Was it driven by the activist background that you have? Actually, I can say from birth almost because you said your parents were activists.
Yes. So with me, human rights has always been something that I've written about, something that I've been really interested in, even in the music industry, talking about especially women of color. My PhD initially, when I first registered for a PhD, the topic was representation of women of color in rock music. So I've always been interested in the political, the social, political, economic, and environmental side of things. That's how I always break things down. And even when I was covering music, it was still very, very much focused on the marginalized. And when I realized that the music industry was not a place for somebody like me, I was always on the outskirts, on the sideline, and I didn't really want to fight that fight. I decided to go full steam ahead into the human rights journalism side of things because it's where my passion lay anyway.
Exactly. So, when you grew up, you kind of like saw some, I guess, the ending of apartheid South Africa, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's dive into that a little bit. So that means you as a child, and obviously as a child, you see a lot, but you probably don't know what it fully means, right? What do you remember of apartheid South Africa?
I remember little things. I remember being in the thick of the anti-apartheid struggle for as long as I can remember. The politics hit me quite young, and my parents never hid anything from us. They tried to lessen the blow of a lot of the experiences by explaining as much as possible to us so that we weren't left in the dark. Especially my mother, who has such a beautiful way of explaining things. She's a teacher by trade. She's a primary school teacher.
Mhm.
And oh, she's still working, even though she's almost 70. And they never let us feel the full impact. But some of the things that I saw were vile treatment. Like it was absolutely vile treatment from people like the police, from white people in general, but also this kind of self-hatred that grew in the Indian community in South Africa, where my friends at school would pick on me for my family not towing the line. So there was a lot of that. And even post-apartheid, I would say immediately post-apartheid, we moved into what was known as a white area. And the boys on the street, they would be horrible. They would call us names. I was called a coolie, which is an anti-Indian slur in South Africa, even though it's not a slur elsewhere in the world. Um, there were lots of names that we were called. There were lots of underhanded racial comments being made. In fact, there was somebody on the street whose child fell into a pool and they refused to get into my mother's car to go to the hospital because they were white and they said no, they don't want to get into a car with a person of color. And to the detriment of that child, the racism is still very much ingrained, but it was far worse and far more overt back then.
When we talk about apartheid South Africa, can you just give us like a precise but short synopsis of what it meant for those maybe younger audience or people who never really had the chance to look into it because they simply didn't care or were never, in that.
Mhm. So apartheid was a set of laws and pretty much a belief system that people of color were less than white people. I mean, this is a worldwide phenomenon. So entrenching racism within the legal system. So people of color were not allowed to live amongst each other. So we had Black people living in separate areas to Indian people living in separate areas to what is known as colored people being mixed race. That was the racial classification. And of course, white people being given the cream of the crop of the land, white people being the only ones allowed to own certain businesses. And there was a kind of a hierarchy where Indian people fell above Black and colored people, but it was still segregated. Like we were only allowed to own certain businesses and live in certain areas and own houses with certain amenities. Um, and of course, Black people bore the brunt of all of this.
It's really crazy when you think of all of this taking place in Africa,
Mhm.
and this is very similar to what's going
Yes.
on in the Middle East right now with Palestine.
Yeah. So apartheid and Hafrada are two concepts. Well, it's one concept with two different names.
Yes. Well,
It is still very much the same, with the checkpoints being very similar to the Dompas system. With the Dompas system is where people of color had to carry a pass to show that they were allowed to work in certain areas at certain times. They were allowed to move through these areas only with that pass. So the checkpoint system is very much the same, not being allowed to walk on certain roads. Black people were not allowed to walk on the sidewalk. They had to walk on the road.
you believe that's
Yeah.
crazy, right?
Mhm.
When do you remember the moment when apartheid ended? The day, the time period?
This is a funny story because it was a Saturday morning when I got up and it was my birthday. My birthday
Mhm.
is on the 11th of February. And in 1990, I turned 6. I woke up very excited. I was having a party that day, but everybody was gathered around the TV because Mandela had been freed that morning. And I was just standing at the back there like, but it's my birthday. And then seeing the TV and realizing this is actually happening. My parents and their entire generation never believed that they would see the freedom of South Africa in their lifetime. They were preparing to teach us to take over the fight. In fact, they did anyway because we have different fights to carry on with, just different kinds of enemies. Um, but looking at Israel, I see it's pretty much the same. Um, but when Mandela was freed, there was a different energy about the country. There was a lot of violence in certain places, but there was a sense of not just victory, but relief for a lot of people, especially people like my family, because it was a hard won fight. And they knew that the fight wasn't fully done yet. The revolution still had to come, but one part of the revolution had been fought and won. So between 1990 and the election in 1994, even though there was a lot of violence and a lot of negotiations and so much talk about where the country is going, white people were leaving left, right, and center, being afraid for their lives. A lot of Indian people left as well, being afraid of what they called reverse apartheid happening, which never did happen, and reverse racism, which I find hilarious. There was there was a sense of fear, there was a sense of uncertainty. But in 1994, I remember it was the largest voter turnout in the country on the 27th of April, 1994. And that entire week of elections, it was the biggest party the country ever had. It was phenomenal.
So you are in two minds when it comes to Mandela, right?
Yes, I am.
Can you explain a little bit why? You don't have to go into detail or too deep if you don't want to, but just a little bit so we can see both sides to the story from your perspective.
Mandela's diplomacy enabled a sound and peaceful transition into our post-apartheid era. However, it was a little bit of a cop-out. It was a sellout. And I feel that more could have been done to economically empower people of color in the country, because it's still working under capitalism. White people make up 7.3% of our population, and they still own 90% of the country's wealth. There was no redistribution of resources. International companies still own our mines. We don't have control over our own means of production. So even though, and it's not just Mandela himself, because he was a great man. His words have inspired billions.
Worldwide, yeah. But do you believe this could have been the deal to end apartheid? Basically, okay, we're gonna let you out, we're gonna end apartheid, but we're still gonna maintain control of the economy.
Absolutely. I mean, the country is still in the hands of white monopoly capital. And I think that was part of the deal, because especially when it comes to colonial powers, freedom is always conditional on good behavior, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And especially when I mean, the whole decolonization is kind of a lie as well, because when we just like, look at colonialism, I have such a hard time saying that word because I literally don't like it. But yeah.
I also have those words.
I swear. And this, no, because I just don't like the concept. I just, obviously. But so you said earlier a lot of Indian people left, right? Your family, have your parents, were they born in South Africa?
Yes.
So to them, it was always home. It was never.
People have been in South Africa since 1860. It's home. Yes.
Exactly. Because they've been there forever.
There's a lot of love for this land.
Yeah, and this is like the reason why I'm bringing this up. I just wanna again kill the argument. Why didn't they leave? And I just want to say this is home. When people live there for over generations, it becomes home. It's all you know. So.
Yes. But also, there's a lot of anti-Black sentiment in the Indian population in South Africa, and that I can say it with my full chest, that I would safely say that the majority of the Indian population in South Africa, even though there were a lot of Indian people in the anti-apartheid struggle, there were so many people who just toed the line. And
where do you think this comes
people
from?
left because they were afraid of a Black government. Ingrained racism throughout the apartheid, the institution of apartheid, with the belief that Indian people are better, that stratification of society along racial lines, but colonialism pitting people of color against each other. Second.
Like always, yes. But now, 34 years later, how do we, are there any traces of apartheid, except obviously the obvious ones that you talked about, the economy still
Mhm.
owned by white people?
We still see racist beliefs. We still see generational wealth being passed down in white families. We still see the capitalist nature of the economy playing into the hands of whiteness, and then those who work hard, quote unquote. Um, it's really about privilege, but we also see it in the racist beliefs of people on the street every day. People won't say um, racial slurs every single day, but then you have one incident that shows you there's this ingrained racism. And I think most communities, there is very much an anti-Black narrative that is entrenched by not just apartheid and colonialism, but by this belief that Black people cannot run their own countries. And that is absolute nonsense. So when I say that apartheid never truly ended, it was just privatized, I say it over and over again because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a very real analogy of the whole situation because, um, as I told you also before, it just cracks me up when, up to this day, there is still white South Africans running away because they say it's too violent, too dangerous. Middle-aged white men cannot find a job in South Africa
Ugh,
anymore. It's cringe,
it's nonsense.
right?
It's very cringy because white men in South Africa are still the ones who own all the companies. They're still the top brass in all the companies. If you look at all of these corporates, all of their boards are lily white. And if they want diversity, they'll hire a white woman.
If they want diversity, they hire a white woman.
Yeah,
Okay. How
that's their
diverse?
thing because
Very diverse.
affirmative action affirmative action benefits mostly white women.
That is very true. Very, very true.
Mhm.
So, obviously, and I had the big honor to kind of like witness it in person, but South Africa is basically loved by the world right now because of their very
Yes.
strategic and amazing, great move, taking Israel to the court, to the ICJ for
Mhm.
intent of genocide. Although, what do you really think about it? Because honestly, I'm not.
Okay.
How do you feel about it?
Let me first say I am proud of my country. I am proud that we as a country have stood up and said enough. Our legal system, our constitution is bulletproof. Our constitution is the most beautiful constitution I've seen. And as for other constitutions, I think the US Constitution needs to be burned into the fiery pits of hell and something like ours instituted. Um, but I am very disappointed in individuals in our country who are still saying things like Israel has a right to defend itself. They don't. Um, that it all started on October 7th. It didn't. And I'm still disappointed that South Africa as a country has not sanctioned Israel yet. Yes, we expelled the Israeli ambassador. Amazing. Our boycotts, they're going fairly well. Um, I mean, people have made the boycotting a part of their daily lives. Corporations are still investing in other Israeli companies. The divestment is not happening at the pace that we want it to. And sanctions need to happen now. And I think a lot of places are waiting for the month to be up for the next presentation of at the ICJ, when Israel has to present and say, "Hi, we stopped genociding," or "We didn't stop genociding," to impose sanctions. But I don't think that's going to happen. But South Africa does need to do more in that regard. But I am disappointed in the ICJ itself. I
Let
am
me
not disappointed in our legal team.
yeah, let me get into there, or let me get in there first before we go to the ICJ. So, I do agree with you with everything that you said, but I have to say, this again goes back to what you said prior, that the economy is owned by white people, and these white people are pretty much the same people from everywhere that are supporting this ongoing genocide. So it's not really
Yes.
surprising that the sanctions didn't happen as of yet. It's not really surprising that people
Mm-hmm.
are still investing, because again, it's the same group of people. Now
Yes,
with the
exactly.
ICJ, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yep. I'm not surprised with our private sector. I'm not surprised with the ICJ. I'm surprised at our government because we've always been supporters of Palestine. I'm disappointed that we not only have we not had sanctions yet, but we haven't addressed the fact that the ICJ is still a colonial institution. It's still tied to the UN. It's still very much a protector of not just white monopoly capital, but neo-colonial and Western imperial mindsets. I don't know what we were expecting from the ICJ. I think we were expecting too much. And Ilan Pape wrote a piece saying that, what the ICJ did was not enough. And absolutely, I will echo his words when I say that, firstly, it is a colonial institution. And secondly, if they didn't institute a ceasefire right from the start, it just meant a month of more people getting killed. And they're killing at a faster rate now. You are seeing Israelis dressing up, well, the idea of dressing up as doctors and nurses and going into a hospital and shooting people. You're seeing prevention of aid to rescue a little girl from a car where she has to sit in that car for hours with her dead family around her. This is inhumane. This is absolutely inhumane. And for the world to be watching this and for the ICJ to say, oh, stop it, please. It's a maintenance of neo-imperialism. And why are we surprised?
Honestly, I'm going to be honest. I was not surprised by the ICJ, because I went into it without any expectations, because words matter, language matters. It was never about a ceasefire. It was always about proving whether this whole case should
Yes.
go forward or not, and it was always about the intent. Even the wording of plausible reasoning, I don't even agree with that. Plausible is not good enough for me. That's what
Not.
I'm, absolutely what I find disrespectful. And for me, what the ICJ did there, and I always said that since Friday, is just a pacifier given to us, to the people who became a movement worldwide in support in support of the Palestinians against these massacres, against this new age Nakba that's really happening. When we think about the whole situation, as you said, it's just a faster rate, it's a month. What do you think after this month is going to happen? Do you have any thoughts on that, or not at all?
I don't want to get my hopes up. That is the one thing that I don't want to do, because keeping in mind all the time that all of these international bodies serve Western imperialism, it is really hard to not hold hope, because I have to hold on to hope. But I'm uneasy. I'm very uneasy because we are seeing this unfolding in front of us. This is the ongoing Nakba that everybody has been talking about for 76 years. However, we are seeing it now in real time. We are seeing it now in the age of TikTok. We are seeing it now in the age of Instagram live streams, where uh, citizen journalism has far more power than the mainstream media. People are unsubscribing from places like the New York Times, that weaponized rape in order to garner sympathy for Israel.
Can you believe
And
that they're
all of
going
these
around
publications,
telling people that they have nothing to do with this? The New York
they're
Times.
honestly, they're honestly telling people, and like they're firing, like mainstream news is firing pro-Palestinian journalists left, right, and center.
It's
I
ridiculous.
mean, it is ridiculous, and it's transparent, and it's there for the world to see that all of this imperialism is happening before our eyes. And a lot of people are feeling powerless to stop it, powerless to do anything, because there's only so much protest can do. There's only so much that boycotting can do. We have to put pressure on our governments. And this is a conversation I was having with my father the other day. We need civil disobedience. We need to make our countries ungovernable until they listen to us. And people should never be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
I love that. That is very true. That's definitely a real statement. But you see, like a lot of people, they feel helpless. Like everybody is like, okay, what can I do? I'm just watching this and I cannot continue watching one more child being taken off this earth and then in a very brutal way, or one more woman. Like, you know, like when you think about it, it's very unbearable. This is not only a generational trauma for all the Palestinians, especially when I talk to Palestinians on the ground, or I also do have a friends in the West Bank, and I had a friend yesterday. He's a very, very, very strong soul, but he literally broke down and he was saying, we fall asleep if we sleep, and we're thinking death. We wake up thinking death. We have breakfast thinking that. It's just, he says, I can't. It's just hard for me if I go out now to go run my errands and go shopping. I have to be quick, and I don't know if I'm coming back, if I ever going to see my children again, if I ever see them actually, you know, finish their, you know, get their degrees and become something. I have to say no to my children if they want to come along, you know, like it's just really something that the world is watching. And even if you are not affected, you are not human. I just wholeheartedly believe that. If
Yeah.
somebody's watching this and agreeing with this, you can't be human. There's no way you're human.
I'm going to say that, not that you are not human, that you have lost an aspect of your humanity.
Well, you're nicer than me.
Because because we need to acknowledge that these are humans doing this to each other. We need to acknowledge that this is what humanity is capable of, that this is something that people do. This is something that people have done to each other for as long as humanity has been around. That we have always subjugated other people in order to gain either power, money, land, whatever the case may be. It has always been about having the bigger and better resources, the access. It's wild to me that it is the year of our oppression, 2024, on Bisan's internet, and we're still having arguments with people saying that Palestinians are human animals. No, I'm not going to have those conversations. I'm not going to dehumanize them, and I'm not going to be allowed, and I'm not going to allow the Palestinians to be dehumanized by them, because it's that acknowledgement that this is people.
Absolutely.
This is what humanity is. But humanity is also kindness. Humanity is also having that Palestinian friend of mine call me every year on my birthday and sing at the top of his lungs, even though he couldn't sing for shit.
I love it. That's beautiful. Let me switch gears a little bit. You said something that's obviously very important to you and to me as journalists. You said a citizen journalism is kind of like on the rise because it's way more authentic and way more honest. How do you feel about that?
I have always been a fan of citizen journalism. There are purists out there who say citizen journalism is a bastardization of the profession. I say no. I say citizen journalism adds to the authenticity of the media. It adds to the credibility of the media when you take the people into consideration. We're not sitting in an ivory tower. We're not academics, even though, yeah, I am part academic. We're not academics. We are making the world accessible to other people, and that's the important part. We are telling people stories, and that's the reason I wanted to be a journalist in the first place. I wanted to tell people stories.
Same.
It's a case of telling people stories from the device in their hands. It's just another tool to tell people stories. I don't see the phone that they're recording on as the message itself. It is the tool. It's the hammer. And we make the stories happen, and we make it coherent, and we put everything together, and we say, this is the overall picture. from all of these stories that we have pieced together from the people on the ground. That is what having a journalist on the ground is about, really. When you have a stringer, when you have a photographer, when you have somebody reporting from the place itself, it could be anyone doing that reporting. It's just a matter of whether they have the skills to write the piece coherently or not.
Yes, and connect with the audience,
Could be anyone.
Yeah, if you can
And that's a
command
skill that you
attention.
develop.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. But like censorship is very heavy, and it's been actually ongoing for a while now. And now we're really feeling the depth of it. How do you feel about censorship on a whole, but especially on journalists that never signed up? Because when you become a journalist, like at least for me, is when you want to tell a story, when you want to highlight certain things, like you want the truth to be out there, you want these people to be heard. And now all of a sudden we're not allowed to write or speak the truth.
Mhm. I think being a troublemaker comes in handy in these times, and being a freelancer also comes in handy because, oh, no one's censoring me. But inside the newsroom, you can see every single authoritarian government or every single authoritarian regime comes with media censorship. When you don't have freedom of the press, you know that there's something wrong.
Yes,
There's propaganda left, right, and center coming out of Israel, coming out of the US, coming out of the UK, coming out of Germany, deliberately misleading people. It's not just misinformation. Misinformation is when you mistakenly share something that's wrong. Like when your grandmother shares that forwarded 100 times WhatsApp message, that's misinformation. But when a government shares information like Biden saying that he saw photos of the 40 beheaded babies, that is disinformation. The deliberate sharing of information that you know is wrong, intended to mislead people, intended to create a narrative that you want. And disinformation thrives under authoritarian regimes. And Israel is one of them. A lot of people under apartheid South Africa said, we didn't know. And I find it hard to believe. But then you look at newspapers from those days and you say, I believe some people. Because actually, you had disinformation in your hands every day, every Sunday, when you were looking at the Sunday newspapers, because all of this was censored. There was nothing that was true printed in those widely distributed newspapers. All of the radio shows were censored. But then they had access to alternate media anyway. So I would say, yeah, I call bullshit. Now we have the internet. Now we have the internet. And now we have people inside Israel still spewing out the stuff that their government is telling them. I'm like, you don't have to do a Google search. You can listen to somebody who's telling you stuff on TikTok and look at their screen and say, I stand corrected, but they refuse.
Because it's an introduction. Oh my gosh.
Because it's the internet, because they don't trust people on the other side of the world on their
I think they
phones.
brainwashed.
So it's a layered, it is brainwashing. It really is propaganda. I mean, it was the same with Germany, and it very much is the same thing in places like the US and the UK. The UK feel like they did nothing wrong with colonialism. I went to the UK, I went to England in 2017, and somebody at the bar was like, how did Indian people end up in Africa? I'm like, are you being serious right now? Do you not know that your people, your ancestors, took us there by force? You don't know this? How? Mm-mm. The
it's
disinformation is wild.
Yeah, because like nobody looks into history. And you know what? I have my own theory. So in school, I hated history with a passion because of how it was taught. And I feel like this happens to most people. Maybe not to all people, but to most people. They hate history or become uninterested in history because of how it's taught at school. And that's why you never go back after school and look into things again.
Mhm. I think
Oh,
the education system does fail people
yes.
in many ways, especially in places like the US, where teaching is meant to be for churning out a workforce rather than to empower people with knowledge. So yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wanna get into your journey a little bit more. So you went
Mhm.
from music journalism right into freelancing and then academia, or like what happened when you realized, okay, this whole music thing, I don't want to do this part anymore. I want to start doing
Mhm.
something else.
I always wanted to be an academic doing journalism. That was the big dream.
Hmm.
From the time I was 12 years old, I said I want to get a PhD. And after I became a Doctor Who fan, I said I want to be Dr. Ramkisoon so I can say, trust me, I'm the doctor. That was a running joke.
This should
But
be a t-shirt. This should be a merch,
it should.
seriously.
Trust me, I'm the doctor. I think the BBC will have a problem with that. But I wanted to get a PhD not just to be Dr. Ramkisoon, but to be a trusted voice in terms of the stories I wanted to tell. And being a teaching academic and also being a journalist at the same time, I know it's hard. Um, but being able to write, being able to research, being able to teach. I come from a family of teachers, so I think it's in my blood. Um, but also that sense of I never wanted authority. I wanted to be trusted in terms of the stories I told.
Mhm.
Um, and as much as I joke about being Dr. Ramkisoon, it's very much rooted in telling the stories that don't get told. And I hate it when people say, give a voice to the voiceless. There's no such thing as the voiceless. There's only the deliberately silenced, and they are silenced for a reason. And so telling those stories, being able to say, hey, I can tell these stories and you have to listen to me because I've got doctor in front of my name, damn it. Um, but teaching, empowering people through knowledge is what I've always wanted. And that comes with telling people stories, empowering them by giving them a space to tell their stories and empowering the people who are reading or hearing those stories. It's all about empowerment because knowledge is power. And so I did teach journalism for a little while until I moved to Sweden, and then Sweden happened and lockdown happened, and now I have a podcast. Life takes you in weird directions, especially when you're not looking.
So are you in Sweden now?
No, I'm back in Johannesburg.
Okay. Okay. You left the
Mm.
cold Sweden to go back to Joburg. I love that. That's a better
Oh no,
decision, I guess.
I want the cold. No, I want the cold back. I love snow.
Oh, you want the cold back? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
I'm
so
very much a winter baby.
I see. So we might see you back in Sweden at some point.
Oh, inshallah.
Um, so you seem to be a rebel through and through because you did also some conflict reporting and you said that was not really up your alleyway because honestly, and I do understand, I do agree with it. It's also something I definitely don't enjoy because it is very hard, especially if you the emotional side of things. Mhm.
It is emotional, and I still want to tell those stories. If
Mm.
I was given the opportunity to be in Khazar right now, I would go
Yes, I think
in a
everybody would.
heartbeat.
Seriously, even my
Mhm.
dad, who's really old, he was like, I can barely walk, but I'm going. I'm like, what do you want to do
Mhm.
there? You're gonna create a problem for them. Now they have to look after you.
No, I would go in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
If
totally.
somebody had to tell me right now, pack your bags, we're going,
Yeah,
or you're going,
yeah.
I would phone my family first and tell them, hey, I'm going, and I'm not going to hear anything about anybody trying to talk me out of it.
I said the same. I said I'd make the phone call when I'm almost there.
Yeah, I think the only people I would tell are like my closest
Yeah.
and be like on the phone with people like at the airport, like, by the way, I'm on my way. Um, but conflict reporting is not for everyone.
No,
And
it's
I
not.
think mental health is really important to take care of as a journalist. My mental health is not all that pretty. Um, and it's not easy to take care of yourself in those kinds of situations. So
A great
um,
segue.
I had to choose. Like, there have been many winding roads and twists and turns in my career, and settling here and being, well, working from my desk has been the most comfortable option so far.
Mhm.
What has been uncomfortable about it has been approaching stories with a different lens and changing my approach every so often and learning about how to use social media as a tool of journalism, how
Yeah,
to use certain, like even something as simple as learning to use a new piece of software is discomfort. And I don't mind making myself uncomfortable because the more you get comfortable, the more complacent you get.
totally.
And when you're telling people stories, you've got to make yourself uncomfortable and prepared to listen to the best and the worst of humanity.
Absolutely. But when you talk about making that choice about putting your mental health first, when
Mhm.
did you when were you diagnosed with bipolar?
I was diagnosed fully with bipolar in 2006.
Oh, so okay,
And
so
I
you,
still
you
went
learned to live
ahead.
with it.
Yeah, I've been learning to live with it. It's therapy, but there's a lot of trauma behind it because,
Mhm.
and this I say, not being a medical professional, this is something that I've read and listened to many professionals talk about, that everybody has a latent bipolar gene and it takes trauma to activate it. So, yeah, the trauma activated it. Very much so. Yeah.
Excuse me. And do you when do you feel it the most? Like what triggers it, or when do you feel like, okay, this is getting out of
Even
hand?
though I am on medication, there's episodes and slumps and highs that you can't avoid.
Mhm.
It's the medication for it stabilizes you to an extent. So something, anything, my shoelace breaking can trigger just a flood of tears. Somebody told me when I used the word derp in a sentence to describe my cat, somebody told me that the word derp is a slur, jokingly, and I was just waterworks.
Oh,
And
okay.
he had to immediately apologize and say, no, 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 I'm joking, I'm joking. And I was like, just don't do that to me, not when I'm in the state, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was funny in retrospect, but at the time, it was a trigger for me. So
Do you
anything can trigger tears, anything can trigger a manic episode where I will drive fast and spend money I don't have. And it's awful living with bipolar, and it's a degenerative disorder. So it means that it basically breaks down your brain.
do you feel like you got it more under control over the years, or do you feel like it's like the same, and it's just like as an adult you learn to live with it because you've been through it so much now?
I make space for it. And that is a huge difference between learning to live with it and managing. I make
Yes.
space for it. So when I have, just say, tonight, I would be going out to dinner with a friend.
Mhm.
I would say, I'm feeling a little bit manic. Is it okay if we either cancel, or are you okay with having dinner with me on the verge of mania? And I've lost a lot of friends over the years because of my illness.
Wow.
Because, like, there was one friend, she was messaging me all the time, and I'm so grateful that she tried her best with me. And I constantly said no. I constantly pushed her away. And I miss her, but it is a side effect of this disorder that, the depressive side brings out the worst in you, the manic side brings out the worst in you. And that feeling of stability, I wish it could last forever, but it doesn't. It's just about making space for it. and knowing this is my existence and this is how I can not combat the disorder, but how I can try to stay alive during it.
I love what you said. I think this is very important to tell people to make space for something, especially if it's
Mhm,
a mental condition. It's very, very important.
mhm.
What do you feel? Is that the best advice you can give, or do you have anything else that you say that helps you a lot when
It
you have
helps
this
me.
episode?
I will never give anybody with any mental illness advice.
I love that because
Never,
it's
because
so
everybody is
individual.
different.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I love that. And this is real, and this is why I feel like when people ask always for advice, and I was secretly hoping you would say that, only because I just feel like, there are so many people who give you, so, like, I feel like routines are important, but a lot of the times they are overrated, if you know what I
yeah.
mean.
Mhm,
So, and I feel like because we're all individual, we're all, are authentic. I feel you can just listen to someone, take what you want from what they said, and just
mhm,
work with it. But to have like a full blown, you know, here, this is what you have to do. Number one, number two, it is just crazy,
mhm.
you know.
It is.
Um, and when did you realize that you was non-binary?
I came to the realization last year because my entire life, especially after the childhood trauma, I've always felt uncomfortable in my body. Like I'm kind of like a girl, but from the discount store.
Oh my God, that's a
I
very wow. Yeah, no, I've never heard that before. Sorry, that really caught me. That's crazy. Okay.
there's something
Oh,
off about the girl side of it. I've always felt that. And I never knew there was a language for it. I never knew there was a term for it. I just went throughout my life thinking everybody kind of feels uncomfortable in their body. Everybody has a little bit of gender questioning, like maybe I shouldn't be a girl. Maybe I'm not really. And then I realized in conversation with a lot of other people, no, that's not the case. Not everybody feels that way. A lot of people, most people, in fact, feel quite not comfortable in their bodies, but comfortable in their gender.
mhm.
Like they're cool with it. I never realized that the fact that I wasn't a universal experience. And then last year, somebody actually told me, "Hey, you may be non-binary." Like, no, I'm not. I'm feminine and all of these things, and I like all the feminine things. And like, do you feel like you don't want to be perceived every now and then? Like, yeah, I just want to hide, and it's nothing to do with my appearance. It's the fact that I just don't want to be a girl. Like, yeah, you're non-binary.
What is your masculine side that you feel like that's, like making you, giving you the man side to your femininity?
That's interesting because I don't embrace masculinity at all. It's
That's
more
what I
like
thought.
it's more like I like being a woman,
Mhm,
especially in certain like sexually, I'm completely woman. Like,
mhm,
yes.
mhm,
But I never really truly felt manly or masculine.
mhm.
It's always been either that feminine or don't look at me. It's always slung between those two. And that's why I say non-binary, because there is no binary of masculine and feminine in me. It is either full on feminine or I don't want to exist in this body today. Like,
This is
give
very
me another body.
interesting. This is very interesting, and I hope you don't mind me asking, but why is this classified as non-binary if you actually feel 100% feminine, and if you don't feel feminine, you just don't feel like, I don't want you to look at me. I don't want to be seen right now. Why is that equated with non-binary?
Because I don't fit into the binary of man, woman.
But the question is, do you have to? What if you're just
You don't.
feminine? Exactly. What if you're just feminine and then sometimes it's just like, listen, I don't want to talk about feminine, masculine, or whatever. Just leave me alone.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's why some people say gender non-conforming, which may be a completely different thing.
Mhm.
I'm not fully clued up about what the difference is between non-binary and gender non-conforming. I still need to read up more and speak to
Yeah.
more people about it, speak to people whose experience it is. But the non-binary thing is just, I just don't fit into it. Like
Well,
man,
yeah.
woman, mm-mm, mm-mm.
That's what I thought. I mean, I don't know if this should have maybe a different name to how you feel rather than non-binary, but if you say I totally embrace my femininity and if I don't, then don't look at me. And I feel like honestly, I mean, I think we all have that where sometimes we'll be like, oh my God, I look like shit. Like I don't want anyone to look at me today or see me, like leave me alone.
But it's not to do with the looks. And that's the thing.
Okay. So it's more like an
It's
inner feeling.
mhm, mhm.
I
It
see.
stems from trauma. My non-binariness,
Hmm.
so to speak,
Hmm.
it definitely stems from trauma.
I see.
So I was, and this is a huge trigger warning, I was sexually abused by a family friend
Mhm.
between the ages of 4 and 9, um, and developed myriad mental instabilities as a result of it. But one of them being DID, dissociative identity disorder, where I have
Yes.
different alters. It kind of rules my life and in some cases ruins it. Um, but the non-binariness comes from the fact that I never felt comfortable as girl or woman because I've always associated it with trauma. It is a painful experience to be a girl or a woman because it is always in my mind. You have the potential to be harmed. You have the potential to be abused in this body. And that potential to me has always been associated with danger. Like I don't want this for myself.
So it's a
I don't
protection.
want to, it is very much protective, almost mental measure against that kind of harm that can be done, or the harm that has been done more than anything. So yeah, I think I'm more comfortable in it now, and I take care to correct people of my pronouns. Um,
Yes,
and
like you did with
I'm
me, because I
very,
really had no clue. I literally had no clue.
and I don't mind when people don't know and they misgender me. I don't mind because it's like I didn't tell you, so how would you know?
Yes,
Because I am femme presenting. I all everything about me. I mean, I can't hide the bust, um, even if I wear a binder. And binders are uncomfortable for me. Maybe I'm wearing the wrong one. I don't know.
I think binders
But
generally should be uncomfortable, right?
it should be comfortable. That's
What?
why I probably didn't get the right size and,
Oh, okay.
all of those kinds of things because binders should actually make you feel comfortable.
Really? I
Um,
always thought they were uncomfortable. I always thought they were too
mm-mm.
tight and everything. Okay.
No, if the binder feels uncomfortable, then it's the wrong size, it's the wrong fit, it's the wrong cut, those kinds of things. Um, but it's uh it's very much tied to trauma, and I think a lot of people have a sense of traumatic experience to do with gender when they are questioning um, what their gender entails. And I'm not saying that trans people have the same experience. Everybody has a different experience, but many people I have spoken to about being non-binary
Same,
have said it's a rejection of femininity as a form of violence
same.
or as being the recipient of violence.
Yeah, I heard that from many non-binary people as well, to be honest, and also trans people. Um, I am absolutely, absolutely sorry that you went through this experience as a child, but I'm also very sorry for having this need to protect yourself by, you know, mm, not feeling how you were supposed to feel, because I think everyone should embrace their femininity in the sense of being okay, being confident, and not having this whole "but this could harm me," thought
Hmm.
in the back of their mind. I think this
Yeah,
is very, very heavy.
it is heavy, but ever since decided that I'm going to embrace the fact that I'm woman but from wish, um, it it's a lot more freeing in that knowledge for myself and that kind of liberation, that kind of taking back my own sense of gender, taking back my own sense of self, has been empowering for me. I
Do you
feel
think?
more comfortable now and more empowered than ever before.
Yeah, and that is the most important thing. Do you feel you can get back to, but not even back, but you can get to the point of like, I'm okay with who I am, and I'm okay with not being scared that this very thing that I actually love about myself could cause me a crazy situation? Do you
As
think
long
it's
as
possible?
patriarchy exists, no woman will ever feel safe in their own body. And that I can make as a sweeping statement. There is not a single chance for any woman or femme to feel completely 100% comfortable in their own bodies as long as patriarchy exists. Because that threat of violence is always there for anybody.
That's very
If,
true.
if you're if you're an infant or you are 80 years old, that threat of violence is always there.
That is very, very, very true. Is that also what made you become a feminist?
Well, my whole family basically believe in feminist ideals. I'm the first one to identify as feminist, but specifically proletarian feminism, because, you know, it's always about seizing the means of production. The identifying as feminist has many layers to it. My choice to work in women's rights, in particular, yes, informed by trauma, informed by the fact that I try to help trauma survivors as much as possible. My house is registered as a safe house. So
Wow, that's
if
beautiful.
somebody calls at 2 o'clock in the morning and says, "Hey, I've just escaped an abusive situation. I need a place to stay for the night or 2 nights," my home is open.
I love that.
Mhm.
That's amazing. That's really, really amazing. Well, you have a lot going on, that a lot of stuff that you're dealing with, and I think you're doing a great job. Like, like dealing with
Thank you.
bipolar, dealing with this, being an activist definitely puts a lot on your plate, and I just love the fact that you embrace it, and that's what we're here for, I believe. What's next? What's your plan, or do you have even a plan, or do you just like go along with the crazy world that we're in right now?
I'm needing subscribers on Patreon because the Zionists have cyber attacked my page. Um,
Oh
so
my
a lot of
gosh.
people unsubscribed, and people have been saying I'm an anti-Semite because I support Palestine. There's just I'm trying to bring up my subscriptions on Patreon because that's my only income. Um, I'm turning 40 next month. Uh, in in
Yes.
in 11 days, I'm turning 40. Um, I there's It's daunting because of what's going on in Palestine right now, and that sense of mortality just hits every now and then. Um, I know 40 is not old, but it's also a sense of like, what have I accomplished? I'm kind of taking stock of all of these things. But a plan for the future is definitely still applying for PhD, still applying for funding for PhD. If somebody has $90,000 in their back pocket, please send it this way. Um,
Yeah, you'll find her details in the show notes.
And so it's there is a list of things that I want to want to accomplish, but
Nice.
yeah. The next part is maybe marrying Abu Ubaidah, becoming his like
Oh,
second or third
wait,
wife.
wait. So you are part of the gang as well? Like you belong to those women who fell in love with him without even seeing
Mm,
him?
mm, mm.
Like I don't need
Without
to
even
talk to
seeing
him.
his
I just
face.
like him. That's so funny. I can't. Are you serious?
I am absolutely part of the Abu Ubaidah fangirl brigade.
Okay. So but okay. Well, here's the thing. So if he sees that and he proposes to you, I dare you say no.
You
Don't
know,
let me find out he said no.
you know, I have to divorce my current husband.
Oh, okay. Well, this is what we do. Since you're gonna be probably the second or third wife, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say anything wrong about the brother, but I'm just gonna assume he's married. We can just hide your
This is
husband
true.
in the closet.
Maybe you can hide him in the tunnel.
We just have to remember in which one.
As long as I put him with his PlayStation, he's fine.
But wait, somewhere, I mean, I don't know. I doubt Abu Ubaidah would be okay with it, but somewhere they practice polyandry.
Probably.
There you go. So maybe you can talk him into that. That's funny. Okay, see, that's good. I love learning new things about people. So you belong to the Abu Ubaidah love fan
The
club.
fan club.
Okay. Let's not get too much into it before they cancel us completely. I've lost enough subscribers just like you. I lost also everything. Not that I care. We have to start from. What did Drake say? It started from the bottom. Now we're here, so let's do it for a second time. 2.0. But
Yes.
we will definitely have everything in the show notes. Also the Patreon link where you guys can sign up if you want to be part of the movement of the bipolar feminist movement. Last question for you: how do you promote your Patreon?
I usually put it on social media. I'm very, very bad at self-marketing. I am that person who's like, oh, just follow me, you know. Nikki Starfish on all social media except Instagram, where I'm the bipolar feminist _, and those places is where I promote my content. And you can also follow the bipolar feminist _ on Instagram for dank memes.
Ooh, there you have it. There you have it. And she's also on TikTok. But as I said, you'll send me all the links that you want me to include in the show notes, and we will put them there. And Nikita, thank you so much for opening up. It was amazing. It was a very, very how do I say, eye-opening. I hope that that people really took a lot from this episode. Thank you for being so open and so vulnerable and speaking on all of this. And I would love to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Nez. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Well, that's it, guys. There you have it. This was a great episode. I definitely learned a lot and I love learning. And thank you guys for tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from. And I'll be back with a brand new episode next week.